Traditional history books usually scrub out the humiliating details to protect the great leaders of the past. Not here. Today, we're ignoring the genius maneuvers to focus on the armies that waged war on vegetable broth, the battalions defeated by literal insects, and the invasions where everyone just got hammered and attacked themselves. These are 15 of the most idiotic, bizarre, and catastrophic military blunders that prove having a high rank doesn't always mean having a brain. Number 1. The Kettle War. In 1784, Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II tried to force the Scheldt River open for trade. He dispatched 3 vessels to demand passage, assuming the Dutch would simply fold. Instead, the Dutch sent a single ship, the Dolphin, to block them. You'd expect a thunderous naval exchange, but reality was much weirder. The Dolphin fired one solitary shot. It didn't hit the hull or the mast. It perfectly struck a soup kettle sitting on the deck of the Austrian flagship. Broth exploded everywhere. Utterly panicked by the destruction of their lunch, the Austrian captain surrendered immediately. The only casualty in this entire international incident was a pot of soup. Number 2. The Battle of Tonga. During World War I, the British attempted to invade German East Africa with 8,000 men. They outnumbered the defenders 8-1, which should have been an easy victory. However, while trekking through coastal mangroves, they disturbed the one enemy they hadn't briefed: thousands of furious wild bees. The bees didn't care about politics, they just saw a bunch of targets. British soldiers, armed with machine guns and artillery, ended up fleeing in terror from a swarm of insects. Some men were stung hundreds of times. The British had to abandon their gear and swim back to their ships in a defeat later dubbed the Battle of the Bees. Number 3. The Voyage of the Russian Baltic Fleet. This is widely regarded as the most cursed naval trip in history. In 1904, Russia sent its fleet around the globe to fight Japan, and the stupidity started in the first week. While in the North Sea, the paranoid Russians saw shadows in the fog and thought they were surrounded by Japanese torpedo boats, despite Japan being thousands of miles away. They opened fire on a group of British fishing trawlers, sinking one and killing innocent fishermen. In the chaos, they even shot at their own ships. To top it off, they bought exotic snakes in Madagascar that escaped and bit the crew. When they finally met the actual Japanese Navy, they were wiped out in hours. Number 4. The Pastry War. Most nations fight over territory or resources, but in 1838, France invaded Mexico because of a bakery. A French baker in Mexico City claimed local officers had looted his shop and demanded a fortune in compensation. When the Mexican government laughed it off, the baker wrote to the King of France. Unbelievably, King Louis Philippe took it as a national insult and sent the entire French fleet to blockade Mexico and shell a fortress. People died and ships sank, all because of some stolen croissants. Mexico eventually paid up, making those the most expensive pastries in human history.
Number 5. Operation Cottage. In 1943, over 34,000 American and Canadian troops launched a massive assault to retake the island of Kiska from the Japanese. They arrived with battleships and heavy air support, expecting a bloodbath. The problem? The Japanese had secretly left 2 weeks earlier. The island was empty. But in the freezing, pitch-black fog, the Allied troops became so paranoid that they started seeing ghosts. They began shooting at shadows and noises, which led to American and Canadian units firing on each other for hours. By the time they realized no one else was there, over 300 soldiers were dead or wounded from friendly fire and booby traps. They won the island, but lost the battle to themselves. Number 6. The Battle of Carondelet.
This is the undisputed champion of military incompetence. In 1788, an Austrian army of 100,000 was marching to fight the Ottomans. One night, a group of scouts found locals selling schnapps instead of finding the enemy. They got drunk. When the infantry arrived and asked for a drink, the scouts refused, and a brawl broke out. A shot was fired in the dark, and someone screamed, "The Turks!" Panic exploded instantly. Officers shouted, "Halt!" to stop the chaos, but non-German-speaking soldiers thought they were hearing Allah. The army turned on itself, fighting a brutal all-night battle against their own shadows. By morning, 10,000 men were dead or wounded. The Ottomans showed up 2 days later and took the city without breaking a sweat. Number 7. The Battle of Fishguard. This was the final invasion of mainland Britain, and it was a total joke. In 1797, 1,400 French troops, mostly convicts in uniform, landed in Wales. They immediately found a wrecked ship full of Portuguese wine and got completely wasted. While they were busy looting farms for snacks, a local militia gathered. Legend says hundreds of Welsh women stood on the hills wearing traditional red shawls and tall black hats. Through the blurry, drunken eyes of the French, these women looked like elite British redcoats. Terrified of being outnumbered by an army of grandmas, the French surrendered without a fight. They won the island, but lost the battle to themselves. Number 8. The Liechtenstein Army. This is the only wholesome military operation on this list. In 1866, Liechtenstein sent its army of 80 men to guard a mountain pass in Italy. They weren't interested in the war. They mostly just sat around drinking wine, smoking pipes, and enjoying the view. When the conflict ended, they marched back home. But when they arrived, there was a surprise. They left with 80 men, but came back with 81. They had befriended an Italian defector or an Austrian officer who liked them so much he decided to move to Liechtenstein. They are the only army to go to war and return with negative casualties. Number 11. The Whiskey War. This is the most polite, alcoholic conflict ever recorded. For decades, Canada and Denmark fought over Hans Island, a useless rock in the Arctic. Instead of using bullets, they used booze. Every few months, the Canadian Navy would land, swap the flag, and leave a bottle of Canadian Club whiskey. Then the Danes would show up, swap the flag back, and leave a bottle of schnapps. This passive-aggressive party went on for 49 years. No one died, though several soldiers probably woke up with massive hangovers. It's the only war where the goal was to make sure the enemy had a good drink. Number 12. Napoleon's Russian Retreat. In 1212, Napoleon took 600,000 men into Russia, expecting a quick victory. The Russians just kept walking away, burning everything behind them so the French couldn't eat. When Napoleon finally reached Moscow, it was empty and on fire. He waited for a surrender that never happened until General Winter arrived. The French, still in summer clothes, were forced to walk back through the snow. Starving and freezing, the great army simply dissolved. It was a failure of epic proportions that proved you should never invade Russia without a very, very heavy coat. Number 14. The Toledo War. In 1835, Ohio and Michigan almost started a civil war over a swampy bit of land called the Toledo Strip. Both states called up their militias and marched into the mud, where they promptly got lost and eaten by mosquitoes. They spent weeks yelling at each other from across the swamp. The only actual violence occurred when a Michigan deputy stabbed an Ohio man in the leg with a tiny penknife. Eventually, Ohio got the land, and Michigan got the Upper Peninsula as a consolation prize. Michigan ended up winning because the peninsula was full of copper and iron, while Ohio just got a swamp. Number 15. The Bay of Pigs. In 1961, the CIA tried to invade Cuba with a force of exiles, thinking the local people would join them. They didn't. The plan failed because of a series of amateur mistakes. The invasion site was a literal swamp that trapped the troops, and the air support was a disaster because the pilots and the ground crew were using different time zones. The bombers showed up late, the invaders were crushed in 3 days, and a secret mission became a global embarrassment for the U.S. government. Number 15. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest. This is the betrayal that changed the Roman Empire forever. In 9 A.D., General Varus led 20,000 elite Roman soldiers into the German wilderness, trusting a guide named Arminius. Arminius was actually a German leader who led them into a perfect trap. He marched them into a narrow, swampy forest during a storm where they couldn't form their lines. For 3 days, the Romans were picked apart in a total massacre. Varus killed himself, and the emperor was so traumatized he spent months wandering his palace, screaming, "Varus, give me back my legions!" That's 15 times that history proved that human stupidity is the most powerful force on the planet. Leadership might be a skill, but clearly it's one that a lot of people in history skipped. I know I missed a few legendary disasters. Which military fail is so incredibly dumb that it's a crime I didn't include it? Head down to the comments and let me know. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories about the messy side of the past.